So apparently some family members think borrowing a car means they can do whatever they want with it. But this woman was about to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got an aunt who takes her nephew's car for a supposed pharmacy run and ends up totaling it while racing her boyfriend. When she tells him he should just be grateful she survived, this nurse decides to teach her about respect the legal way. Real quick though, if you're enjoying what we do here, consider liking and subscribing. It's free and genuinely helps us out. Alright, now let's dive in. My keycard barely worked in the apartment door lock, the magnetic strip wearing out just like my patients after a 12-hour shift in the ICU. 3 patients coding, 1 messy tube insertion, and a family meeting where I had to explain that sometimes, even with everything we try, people die. All I wanted was a shower, food that wasn't from a vending machine, and to pass out in my bed. The second I kicked off my shoes, my phone rang. Aunt Karen's name lit up on the screen. I thought about ignoring it, which instantly made me feel guilty, exactly how my family trained me since I was a kid. "Hey, Karen," I answered, trying not to sound dead tired. "Lucas? Thank God you picked up. I'm in such a jam." Her voice had that breathless tone she only used when asking for favors. "My car's in the shop and I need to pick up a prescription. Could I maybe borrow yours? Just for a super quick run to the drugstore?" I paused. My Toyota wasn't fancy, just a 2018 Corolla with okay mileage, but I'd spent 3 years saving while paying off student loans and rent to buy it. Plus, I needed it for my night shift tomorrow. "I don't know, Karen. I'm beat. Could you maybe get an Uber?" "An Uber? Do you know how much those cost?" Her tone changed, getting that hurt, disappointed edge. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, Lucas. It's my blood pressure medication." I rubbed my forehead as my head started pounding. "When would you bring it back?" 2 hours tops. "I promise I'll be quick. You won't even notice it's gone." The smart thing would be to say no. But being the responsible one in my family usually meant saying yes to avoid the drama of saying no. "Fine," I gave in. "But I absolutely need it back within 2 hours. I have to work tomorrow night." "You're the best," she sounded so relieved. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. 15 minutes later, I handed Karen my keys while giving her what felt like obvious reminders. "Just straight to the drugstore and back, right? And you'll answer if I call to check in?" "Of course." She held up her phone. "Got it right here. And Chad's driving me, so don't worry about anything." This was news to me. "Who's Chad?" "My boyfriend?" "I've told you about him." She hadn't. "We've been together 3 weeks now. He's a great driver, super careful." Something about her too bright smile made me nervous, but I was too exhausted to argue. 2 hours, Karen." "I mean it." 2 hours, she repeated, already halfway out the door. "Love you. I should have known better. I really should have." 3 hours later, with no sign of Karen or my car, I started calling. First call, straight to voicemail. Second call, same thing. Third, fourth, and fifth calls, nothing different. By the 6th call, I was walking circles around my apartment, feeling sick with worry. At 11 p.m., my phone finally rang. I grabbed it instantly. "Karen, where the hell are you?" Is this Lucas?" A guy's voice, unfamiliar and kinda slurring. "Who is this?" "This is Chad." "Karen's boyfriend?" "Look, man, there's been an accident." My gut clenched. "Is Karen okay?" Yeah, she's fine. It just shook up. But, your car? It's not good." "Where are you?" I was already grabbing my jacket and wallet. He gave me an address nowhere near any drugstore I knew of. I called an Uber and spent the whole 20-minute ride switching between relief that Karen wasn't hurt and total dread about my car. The Uber turned a corner, and I saw it right away. Red and blue lights flashing, showing me what used to be my Toyota. It was wrapped around a telephone pole, the front completely smashed in, glass all over the street under the streetlights. I got out of the Uber feeling clumsy with shock. This wasn't just damage, this was a total wreck. My car was destroyed, something I'd worked my ass off to buy. Karen stood off to the side, wrapped in a blanket even though it wasn't cold, leaning all dramatic-like against a tall guy with a patchy beard who I figured was Chad. Neither looked hurt at all. In fact, Chad was half smiling as he whispered something to Karen. When Karen spotted me, she suddenly started crying again and rushed over. "Lucas! I was so worried you wouldn't come." She threw her arms around me, smelling like tequila instead of, medicine from a pharmacy. I pulled away gently. "What happened? And why are you nowhere near a drugstore?" Karen's face changed, her crying act turning into defensive attitude in a split second. "We were on our way there when the car just went crazy. The steering locked up or something." Chad nodded like crazy behind her. Totally mechanical failure, man. Nothing we could do. I looked at them both, then at my totaled car. We were weirdly close to Riverside Drive, a place known for late-night racing. The pharmacy story was making less and less sense. If you were heading to the pharmacy, why are you on Riverside? I asked. Karen's eyes got narrow. It's a shortcut. To what pharmacy? The closest one is on Maple, in the complete opposite direction. Before she could answer, a cop walked up. Mr. Reyes? I'm Officer Martinez. Since you own the car, I need to talk to you about what happened. Karen tried to jump in, but the officer politely asked her to give us a minute. When we were far enough away, he stayed professional, but his eyes looked kind of sorry for me. Sir, I should tell you we have multiple witnesses saying 2 cars were racing before the crash. A black Mustang and your Toyota. The Mustang took off right after your car hit the pole. Everything clicked. The location. Chad's smirk. Karen reeking of alcohol while making excuses. Was my aunt driving? I asked, already knowing the answer would make things worse. According to her statement and her boyfriend's, he was driving. But we have different witness stories suggesting it might have been Miss Reyes behind the wheel. He glanced at his notes. We're still figuring it out. I thanked him and walked back to Karen, who'd been watching us talk with obvious worry. Before I could say anything, she went on the attack. What did he tell you? People always make up stuff when they see crashes. They're just nosy jerks. Racing, Karen? You were racing my car? That's crazy. I would never... Multiple people saw you, Karen. Her strategy changed instantly. Her eyes filled with tears and her voice shook with perfect victim energy. You should be grateful I'm alive. A car can be replaced, but I can't. Is that all you care about, stuff? Not that your aunt could have died tonight? Chad stepped up, puffing out his chest. Yeah, man, pretty cold. I glanced between them and my wrecked car. 3 years of double shifts and overtime. Saying no to friends to save money. All that work just to have something stable. Now wrapped around a telephone pole because Karen wanted a joyride. Standing there, I was done. Done with a lifetime of covering for Karen. Done with my mother always nagging me to be understanding, because that's just how she is. Done with everyone calling me the responsible one. Their code for expecting me to clean up their messes, not this time. I took in what was left of my Toyota, then Karen's crying face. I'd seen this show 100 times before. Today I finally saw it for what it was. Fake tears, zero remorse. You can't fix this with sorry and a family dinner, Karen, I said. Not happening. I turned away from her stammering excuses and walked back toward Officer Martinez. I was breaking my family's #1 rule. Always be the good one. Never stand up for yourself. For once, Karen would deal with her own mess. I woke up the next morning with a few seconds of peace before everything came flooding back. For about 3 seconds, I was just thinking about breakfast before it hit me. My car was wrapped around a telephone pole, and my aunt was the one who put it there. I barely slept after getting home from the accident scene. I just lay there for hours, staring at my ceiling, going over every detail again and again, Chad's smirk, Karen's fake crying, and the way Officer Martinez looked at me all sorry while taking my statement. My phone showed 6 missed calls from my mother. Nothing from Karen, of course. I showered, threw on jeans and a faded green Henley, and called a ride to my mom's house. On the way there, I kept going over what I wanted to say, how I'd explain what this was going to cost me, how I wasn't backing down about Karen taking responsibility. Mom would get it. She had to. The driver dropped me off at Mom's small stucco house with its perfect flower beds. I paid and gave him a big tip. Who knew how many rides I'd need now? The second I walked through the front door, I knew something was off. Karen's fancy purse was sitting on the entryway table, like a warning sign that she was here. I could hear voices from the kitchen, Mom talking softly and Karen's fake little sniffles. They were at the kitchen table when I walked in. Karen was leaning over a mug of tea, somehow crying, without messing up her perfect makeup. Mom sat next to her with a hand on Karen's shoulder, and looked up when I came in. Lucas, Mom said, sounding relieved. I was so worried when you didn't answer my calls. Before I could say anything, Karen jumped up and hugged me. I'm so glad you're okay. I was terrified you'd be mad at me for something that wasn't even my fault. I pulled away from her. What do you mean, wasn't your fault? Mom gave me that look she always gives when she wants me to play nice. Karen was just explaining what happened. The car had some kind of mechanical failure. Mechanical failure? I repeated, looking between them. Karen nodded hard, fresh tears welling up. The steering just locked up completely. And then the brakes barely worked. I tried so hard to control it, Lucas. She put her shaky hand on my arm. When was the last time you had it checked? Because honestly, it felt super unsafe. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The car was checked out 3 weeks ago. There was nothing wrong with it. Karen's face changed quickly. Something calculating flashed before she went back to playing the victim. Well, something was definitely wrong last night. Chad said he could hear something rattling under the hood. Multiple witnesses saw you racing, Karen. Mom's eyes got big. Racing? Lucas, that can't be right. It is right. The police told me they have witness statements about 2 cars racing side by side, a black Mustang and my Toyota. Karen started crying again, tears coming on cue. How can you say that? I nearly died last night, and all you care about is your stupid car? You can replace a car, Lucas. I could have been killed. My mother jumped into fix-it mode. Let's all just calm down. Nobody got hurt, and that's what matters most. My car is totaled, Mom. 3 years of savings. Gone. Insurance will cover it, Mom said, brushing me off. And if it doesn't? The witnesses said they were racing. What if insurance doesn't pay for that? Karen let out a big sob. So now you're going to report me to the police? Your own aunt? After everything I've done for you? I tried to think of a single thing Karen had ever done for me and came up blank. Mom stood up. Lucas, can I talk to you privately? She took me to the living room, her voice dropping low. You need to let this go. Let it go? Mom, she wrecked my car. She's going through a really tough time right now. The divorce, her job situation. You know how Karen gets when she's stressed. I looked at my mother, the woman who'd always taught me to be responsible, to work hard, to face consequences. So that makes what she did okay? Of course not. But family helps family when they mess up. This wasn't just messing up. She did this on purpose. Mom's face got a little sterner. Lucas, I taught you better than this. Karen is family. She made a bad choice, but pushing this will only tear us apart. And letting her off the hook will do what exactly? It'll keep peace in the family. She squeezed my arm. Just be the bigger person. Like you always are. There it was. The same old line. Be the bigger person. Translation, let Karen do whatever she wants because it's easier than making her take responsibility. I left soon after, feeling even more alone than when I'd arrived. Back at my apartment, I called my insurance company. After fighting through a maze of automated menus, I finally got a human being named Trevor, who sounded like he was still in high school. So, Mr. Reyes, I see the police report has been filed. Can you tell me exactly what happened? I explained everything as clearly as I could. And you weren't driving the vehicle at the time? No, my aunt was. I'd loaned it to her to pick up a prescription. Was your aunt listed as an approved driver on your policy? My stomach dropped. No. I see. And the police report mentions witness statements about racing? Yes, but I didn't say she could do that. I only gave her permission to go to the pharmacy. Trevor made a little coughing sound. I understand, Mr. Reyes, but I need to tell you that unauthorized drivers doing racing stuff would void coverage under Section 12B of your policy. I felt sick. Are you saying insurance won't cover this? I can't make a final decision until the investigation is done, but based on what you've told me, it's probably not going to be covered. After hanging up, I just sat there stunned. No car, no insurance coverage, and I still had 18 payments left on an auto loan for a car that was now just scrap metal. My phone buzzed with a text from my charge nurse, Paula. Hey, Lucas, just checking you have a way to get to tomorrow's shift? We're short-staffed. Really need you. I hadn't even thought about how I'd get to work. The hospital was a 40-minute drive from my apartment with no direct bus route. If I couldn't find reliable transportation, I might lose my job. One problem at a time. I rubbed my eyes and picked up my phone to answer Paula when I noticed something. Last night, after the accident, I hadn't checked my text with Karen. I scrolled back to our conversation from yesterday. After my final 2 hours, Karen, there were no answers from her. But when I checked our whole message history, I found something I'd missed. About 30 minutes after she'd taken my car, Karen had sent messages that clearly weren't meant for me. Let's see how fast Lucas's car can go. Race you to the pier? She must have accidentally texted me instead of Chad, and never noticed her mistake. My hands started shaking as I took screenshots, getting the timestamps too. This was proof. Proof that the mechanical failure story was a lie. Proof that she had deliberately taken my car racing. I was still staring at the messages when my phone rang. Olivia's name popped up on the screen. Hey, I answered, feeling totally drained. Lucas. Olivia's voice was strong and no nonsense as usual. Mom just called me about what happened with Karen and your car. I'm guessing you're getting the family first lecture from everyone? Pretty much. Well, I'm calling to tell you you're not crazy. And you shouldn't back down. I felt so grateful I could have cried. Thanks, Leave. Did you know this isn't the first time? 3 years ago, Karen borrowed Abuela's car and crashed it into a ditch. Claimed the steering was loose. Sound familiar? Are you serious? Dead serious. Abuela couldn't afford to fix it, so she just never drove again. Started taking the bus everywhere at 78 years old because no one would stand up to Karen. It made me feel sick seeing the pattern. No one ever told me. Because it's easier to enable Karen than confront her. But I'm tired of watching her destroy things and walk away. So whatever you decide to do, I've got your back, and I can lend you my car until you figure things out. I can take the bus to work this week. Liv, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Someone in this family needs to do the right thing for once. After we hung up, I felt a little better. At least one family member was in my corner. I opened my laptop to research my legal options and was about to type unauthorized vehicle use into the search bar when a Facebook notification popped up. Karen had tagged me in a post. I clicked the link and my jaw dropped. It was a GoFundMe page titled Recovery Fund for Karen's Accident Trauma. The cover photo showed Karen in an obviously staged pose, staring sadly out a window with a neck brace I'd never seen at the accident scene suddenly wrapped around her neck. The description made me want to throw my laptop across the room. Last night, I experienced a terrifying accident in my nephew's faulty vehicle. The car experienced catastrophic mechanical failure, sending me crashing into a pole. I'm suffering from whiplash, PTSD, and emotional trauma from the incident. To make matters worse, instead of supporting me through this difficult time, my nephew is threatening legal action against me, the victim. Please help me recover while I deal with both physical pain and the heartbreak of family betrayal. She'd already raised $1,200 from sympathetic friends who'd left comments like, "Family should come first," and praying for healing from all your pain. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Karen pretending to be the victim, making up lies about my faulty car, inventing injuries, and painting me as some heartless monster in her story. That's when it hit me. Everything became clear in an instant. This wasn't just about my car. Please help me recover while my ungrateful nephew threatens legal action. Well, if she was so worried about legal action, maybe that's exactly what she needed. Olivia's car reeked of pine and dog treats, which fit her no-nonsense style perfectly. She dropped it off early that morning, leaving the keys and a protein bar with a note, "Fuel for battle. Don't back down." My insurance agent worked out of a strip mall between a vape shop and a store that only sold fancy pillows. The waiting room had these cheesy posters of smiling families in front of perfect houses. Glenn, my agent, always had this fake smile, the kind you get from spending all day crushing people's hopes about their coverage. "Lucas," he said, pointing to the chair across from his desk, "I've gone through your whole case." I took a deep breath. And, well, it's pretty simple. Glenn kept that plastic smile going while he pulled up my policy. Someone who wasn't allowed to drive your car was street racing. That breaks 3 different rules in your contract. But I never said she could race it. I just told her she could pick up a prescription. Doesn't really matter what you meant her to do with it. Once your aunt used the car for racing, you lost your coverage. It's like if you lend someone a knife to cut veggies and they slash your couch instead. We don't cover the couch just because you didn't say they could wreck your furniture. I wondered what crazy stories this guy had heard to come up with that example. So I'm stuck paying for a car that's basically gone? Glenn nodded, trying to look sad. 18 payments of $312 left, according to what I see here. You might talk the lender into something, but legally you still owe the money. I walked out of his office clutching a folder with denial paperwork and feeling sick, and not because I skipped breakfast. 18 payments. $5,616 for a car I couldn't even drive anymore. Add in the insurance deductible, towing, and storage fees, and Karen's little adventure had cost me almost $7,000. Money I definitely didn't have. Sitting in Olivia's car, I grabbed my phone and saw 3 missed calls from my mom. Before I could call back, a group text popped up. "Mom, family meeting tonight at my house, 7 p.m. We need to discuss the car thing and find a solution everyone can live with. Uncle Robert will be there. This needs to be fixed right away. Karen, thank you." So grateful for family support during this difficult time, I just stared at my screen. Car thing. Like my totaled car was some minor issue instead of a complete money nightmare with my name all over it. Like what Karen did on purpose was just something random that happened to all of us. I texted back, "I'll be there." Took me forever to type those 3 words. I spent the afternoon in my apartment looking up lemon laws, rules about unauthorized vehicle use, and how to appeal insurance decisions. Nothing helpful. Without a lawyer, I was totally lost in all the legal jargon that made 0 sense to me. At 6:45, I drove to my mom's house, practicing what to say. Stay calm. Explain the money situation. Show them the texts Karen accidentally sent me. Once, they saw actual proof, they'd have to get it. I parked Olivia's car and took a deep breath. Through the front window, I could already see them all in the living room. Mom putting coffee cups on the table, Uncle Robert standing with his arms crossed, and Karen wearing a neck brace she definitely didn't have at the crash site, wiping her eyes with a tissue. The second I walked in, everyone shut up. 4 pairs of eyes turned to me. Aunt Teresa, Uncle Robert's wife, gave me a tight smile. No one else bothered. Lucas, Mom said, pointing to the only empty seat, a wooden chair directly across from the couch where Karen sat between Uncle Robert and Aunt Teresa. It felt like one of those hospital meetings I'd been to where they'd already decided everything before you even showed up. We're all here because we love each other, Mom started, trotting out her usual peacekeeper routine. And families work through problems together. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. Lucas, this has gone far enough. Your aunt made a mistake, but you're taking this way too far and being disrespectful. Disrespectful? I repeated. My car is totaled. Insurance won't cover it because she was racing. I still owe $5,600 on a car that doesn't even exist anymore. How is being upset about that disrespectful? Karen sniffled loudly. See? It's always about the money with him. Not once has he asked if I'm okay. She moved her neck brace for extra effect. Are you okay, Karen? I asked flatly. Because you seemed totally fine at the crash. Fine enough to refuse the ambulance. The neck brace is new, though. That's interesting. How dare you? Uncle Robert's face turned red. Your aunt could have been really hurt. But she wasn't, I said. The only real damage was to my car and my bank account. Mom jumped in, trying to calm things down. Lucas, honey, we get that you're upset about your car, but making such a big deal isn't helping anyone. Making a big deal? I haven't done anything except tell the truth. Karen dabbed at her completely dry eyes. He's threatening to go to the police. After everything I've been through, the trauma, the flashbacks. I pulled out my phone. Karen, you accidentally texted me instead of Chad that night. Want me to read what you wrote? The room went quiet. Karen's eyes got wide. I read aloud, let's see how fast Lucas's car can go. Race you to the pier. Sent at 7:42 p.m., 30 minutes after you borrowed my car, for what was supposed to be a quick trip to the pharmacy. For a moment, nobody said a word. Then Karen let out a nervous laugh. That was just joking around. We weren't actually racing. Multiple people saw you racing a black Mustang. People see what they want to see, Karen said, waving her hand dismissively. Uncle Robert leaned forward. Lucas, this family has always stuck together. When someone messes up, we don't turn on them. We definitely don't threaten to call the cops. This wasn't just a mistake, I said. She chose to do something stupid that's now completely screwed me over. Mom put her hand on my knee. Honey, we've been talking, and we think we've figured something out. She had that fake, cheerful tone she always used right before suggesting something awful. You said you had some money saved up for emergencies. If you use that as a down payment on a new car, we could loan you a bit to cover the rest. I just looked at her, shocked. Wait, you want me to spend my rainy day money to fix a mess that Karen made? It would show real maturity, Aunt Teresa cut in. Prove you're better than all this. Karen bobbed her head. And I'd totally let you give me rides sometimes. You know, until I feel okay driving again after what happened to me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They weren't just asking me to forgive, they wanted me to actually reward Karen by becoming her taxi driver. This is crazy, I said, trying to stay calm. You guys are treating me like I'm the one who messed up. Uncle Robert's tone got harsh. The real issue is how you're acting. Family backs family up. End of story. Even when they lie? Even when they steal? I was getting louder no matter how hard I tried not to. Karen took my car by lying about why she needed it. She used it for something I never would have allowed. She wrecked it. She's collecting money online by making up stories about me. And you're all just going along with it. Mom winced. Lucas, please. We just want to keep the family together. Keeping the family together shouldn't mean I have to pay for Karen's mistakes, Mom. That's just letting her walk all over me. Karen's face got ugly for a second before she switched it up, suddenly crying on cue. After all I've suffered, now my own nephew is coming after me. I'm not coming after you, Karen. I'm just saying you need to own up to what you did. For an accident, she practically screamed. For a decision, I said. Going racing wasn't some accident. You chose to do that. Uncle Robert got up, standing over me. That's enough. You've got 2 choices, Lucas. Either be in this family and help us all move on, or keep this grudge going and end up with nobody. Nobody spoke after that threat. I looked around at everyone, Uncle Robert looking so sure of himself, Aunt Teresa going along with it, even though she seemed uncomfortable, Mom practically begging with her eyes, and Karen playing the victim like always. It hit me right then. I wasn't just fighting Karen, but this whole family setup designed to make sure she never faced any real consequences. My phone rang, breaking the tense silence. An unknown number. "Excuse me," I said, heading to the kitchen to take the call. "Mr. Reyes? This is Detective Williams from Metro PD. I'm following up on the accident involving your Toyota Corolla." His voice was calm and professional, such a relief after all the guilt trips and manipulation I'd just sat through. "Yes, Detective, thank you for calling. I've interviewed several witnesses from the scene. We have multiple consistent accounts of two vehicles racing side by side before the crash, a black Mustang and your Toyota. The Mustang fled the scene immediately after your vehicle hit the pole." I leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. That matches what Officer Martinez told me that night. "Mr. Reyes, I need to clarify something for our report. Did you give permission for your vehicle to be used in this manner?" I could hear my family whispering frantically in the living room. I knew exactly what they wanted from me. Back down. Let it go. Be the bigger person, family first. But what kind of family were we really? One where nobody was ever held accountable? Where Karen could do whatever she wanted while the rest of us cleaned up her messes? That's not family. That's just being used. "No, Detective Williams," I said. "I only said she could make a quick trip to the pharmacy. I want to file a police report for unauthorized use of my car." The detective stayed neutral. "I understand. If you can come to the station tomorrow, we can take your formal statement and go from there." After hanging up, I took a minute in the kitchen to pull myself together. When I went back to the living room, Karen was putting on a full crying show while Mom rubbed her back. Uncle Robert shot me a nasty look. "Who was that?" Mom asked. "Detective Williams from Metro PD, I said. "He's investigating the accident." Karen started crying even louder. Uncle Robert got in my face, practically growling. "What did you tell him?" "The truth," I said. "That I never said she could take my car racing." Mom looked shocked. "Lucas, you didn't." "I did." "How could you?" Karen wailed. "Your own family." I stared at Karen, the fake tears, that neck brace she didn't even need, the whole victim act she'd perfected. "That's exactly why I did it," I said. "Because we're family. And family should mean owning up to your mistakes, not expecting others to cover for you." I left before they could say anything else. I could feel them all glaring daggers at my back, but I didn't care. For the first time since this whole mess started, I actually felt good about my decision. Things would get ugly, but at least I knew I was doing the right thing. I'd never been inside a law office before. The waiting room of Hernandez Legal Services had this leather smell mixed with lemon cleaner, and there was this little fountain in the corner that was supposed to be relaxing, but just made me need to pee. I flipped through an old Time magazine from 3 months ago, not reading a single word. "Mr. Reyes?" The receptionist smiled. "Miss Hernandez will see you now." Mariana Hernandez's office was smaller than I thought it would be, with law books and diplomas all over the walls. She stood up when I walked in, a woman in her early 40s who sized me up right away and gave me a firm handshake. "Lucas, right? Sit down." She pointed to the chair across from her desk. "I looked at the notes you sent over. Let's talk about what we can do here." I sat down with my folder of documents, insurance denial, loan statements, and the screenshot of Karen's texts. "I just want to know if I have a case. My family thinks I'm making too big a deal out of this." Mariana raised an eyebrow. "Making too big a deal about someone wrecking your property by doing something illegal? That's an interesting take." She opened a legal pad. "Let's start with the basics. You gave your aunt permission to use your car for what exactly?" "Just to pick up a prescription at a pharmacy. She said she'd be gone 2 hours max. And instead she took it racing, which totally destroyed the car." Mariana wrote something down. "Did she ever admit she went beyond what you said she could do with it?" "Not directly. She says there was something wrong with the car, even though she sent text messages where she flat out said she was planning to race your car." I nodded, pulling out my phone to show her the screenshots. She looked me over, her face blank. "Mr. Reyes, this is pretty simple. When someone takes a vehicle and uses it in ways you didn't agree to, that's basically theft. Just because you let them borrow your car for a specific reason doesn't mean they can do whatever they want with it. So I do have a case? You have several." She counted them off on her fingers. "Using a car without permission, damaging your property, and based on this GoFundMe page." She pointed to the printout I'd brought. "Possibly scamming people. She's asking for money while lying about both the crash and how you behaved." I felt both relieved and worried. Does it matter that she's family? Ms. Hernandez leaned forward. Lucas, the law treats strangers and relatives the same when it comes to property crimes. What do you actually want here? Money back, criminal charges, or both? I just want her to own up to what she did. And I need to figure out my car loan. I can't keep paying for a car that's totaled. She nodded. Then you need proof. Solid proof that shows what happened and how it's hurt you financially. She pushed a yellow legal pad across the desk. Write down every single cost from this whole mess, every dollar, and get as much proof as possible about the accident itself. I walked out of her office with a clear plan and a feeling I hadn't felt in a while. Hope. For the first time since seeing my smashed Toyota wrapped around that pole, I had a way forward that didn't mean just eating the loss and acting like everything was fine. Back in Olivia's car, I grabbed my phone and made a new note called Evidence. I listed everything I needed to get. Witness statements from accident scene security camera footage from businesses near Crash Complete, text exchange with Karen showing limited permission, financial calculations, car payments, work impacts, rental costs, insurance, denial documentation, police. Report Karen's GoFundMe page, screenshots before it's removed. I headed straight to where the accident happened. In daylight, Riverside Drive just looked like a regular street with shops on both sides. The telephone pole had dark streaks of rubber and paint stuck in the wood from the crash. There was a coffee shop right across from the crash site. I went in and walked up to the barista with blue hair and lots of piercings. Excuse me, I'm trying to find out about a car accident that happened here last Friday night. Were you working then? She shook her head. Nah, that would have been Miguel. He always closes on Fridays. Then she perked up. Wait, was it that racing crash? The Toyota that hit the pole? Yes, exactly that one. Miguel wouldn't shut up about it. He saw the whole thing. She grabbed a napkin and scribbled down a number. That's his cell. He said it was like something out of Fast and Furious. 2 cars racing side by side. Thanks so much, I said, putting the napkin in my pocket. One more thing, do you guys have security cameras that might have caught it? She pointed toward the corner. That one points right at the street. We keep the footage for 2 weeks for insurance stuff. An hour later, I'd talked to managers at 3 businesses along Riverside Drive. 2 said they'd share their security footage if I brought in formal requests on letterhead from Ms. Hernandez. The 3rd guy who ran the liquor store was way more helpful. Those idiots race here every weekend, he told me as he took me to his back office with a dusty monitor showing different camera views. I've called the cops so many times I've lost count. Here, I saved this from Friday because I figured someone would come asking. He clicked through files on his computer, then turned the screen toward me. The grainy footage clearly showed 2 cars, a black Mustang and my silver Toyota, racing down Riverside Drive. The timestamp matched exactly when Karen had my car. Even with the crappy quality, I could make out 2 people in my Toyota. The passenger was definitely Chad with his arm hanging out the window. The driver was harder to see, but the long dark hair had to be Karen's. Could I get a copy of this? I asked, sounding calmer than I felt. The owner nodded. I'll email it to you. Hope you catch him. Someone's going to get killed with that racing crap. By the end of the day, I'd gotten contact info from 5 witnesses who saw the crash, promises of video footage from 3 stores, and talked to Detective Williams, who said the police report would be ready within 48 hours. Back at my apartment, I made a list of what this mess was costing me. Remaining car loan, $5,616 insurance deductible, $500. Towing and storage fees, $275 rental car, 2 weeks minimum. $650 rideshare, cost 2 from work. $340 lost wages from missed shift, $280. Total $7,661, almost $8,000. Money I didn't have. Money that would wipe out my savings, mess up my plans for nurse practitioner school next year, and put me back at square one financially. My phone buzzed. Mom. Again. 5th call today. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me answer. Lucas. She sounded stressed. Why aren't you calling me back? I've been busy, Mom. Too busy for family? Karen is totally freaking out. The stress is making her neck worse. I bit my tongue about her miracle neck injury. Sorry to hear that. Lucas, please. Her voice went soft and wheedling, the tone that used to always work on me. This has gone far enough. Just tell that detective you were confused, that you told Karen she could use the car however she wanted. I can't do that, Mom. That would be lying. It's not lying, it's... She paused. It's family loyalty. Was Karen being loyal when she took my car racing? Was she being loyal when she made that GoFundMe making me look like the bad guy? Mom sighed. She made a mistake. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting to return a borrowed sweater. This was her choosing to do something stupid with serious consequences. It was just a little fun that got out of hand, Lucas. She didn't mean for the accident to happen. I froze, reaching for my laptop. Mom, did you know she was racing the car? A pause. Too long. Well, not exactly, but... Not exactly? Either you knew or you didn't. Karen might have mentioned they were going to see how fast it could go. But that's not racing, that's just curiosity. I opened my laptop's voice recorder and hit record. So you knew before the accident that Karen was planning to race my car? That's not what I said. Mom's voice got higher. I knew they might drive it a little fast, that's all. Nobody thought it would end up wrapped around a pole. But you knew it wasn't just a trip to the pharmacy? Another telling pause. Lucas, why are you questioning me like this? I'm your mother. I'm just trying to figure out why everyone's acting like I'm the problem when Karen took my car racing and totaled it. Because family doesn't do this to family. Her voice cracked. Your Uncle Robert says if you go through with this, you can forget about coming to family gatherings. Is that what you want? To be cut off? The threat hung there between us. A year ago it would have worked. The idea of being kicked out of the family would have crushed me. Now I felt weirdly calm. If family loyalty only works one way, Mom, maybe being cut off isn't the worst thing. I hung up and saved the recording. More evidence, my own mother admitting she knew about the racing before the accident happened. The next morning I talked to Paula, my charge nurse, about my transportation situation. Basically, I need to know if my job's at risk if I can't find a reliable way to get here in the next week or two. Paula, a tough lady who'd been running the ICU like a drill sergeant for 20 years, looked at me over her reading glasses. Lucas, you're one of my best nurses. I'm not going to fire you over a transportation problem that isn't your fault. She tapped her pen against her desk. That said, I need you here for your shifts. The hospital gets chaotic with last-minute call-outs. I understand. So here's what we can do. I'll give you a 2-week grace period to figure this out. Meanwhile, I'll hook you up with the staff carpool. Sarah lives by your place, and Jeff drives right past it. Between them, we should be able to cover your shifts until you get your car situation sorted. What a relief. Thank you, Paula. Don't thank me yet. In exchange, I need you to work 2 extra weekend shifts next month when Angela's on maternity leave. Done. With my job safe for now, I turned my attention to gathering the rest of the evidence I needed. Detective Williams was supposed to call when the police report was ready, and Miguel from the coffee shop said he'd write up what he saw. 2 days later, I had everything I needed. The police report confirming the street racing, security footage from 3 stores showing my Toyota racing the Mustang, and statements from 4 witnesses. I'd also saved Karen's texts about racing and her pharmacy excuse, paperwork showing all my expenses from this mess, a recording where my mom accidentally admitted she knew about the racing plan, and screenshots of Karen's fake GoFundMe. Throughout this process, I stuck with what Ms. Hernandez called keeping quiet about collecting my evidence. I barely responded to my mother's daily calls, ignored Uncle Robert's more and more threatening voicemails, and didn't even look at Karen's tearful texts. Let them think I was backing down, scared off by family pressure. Let Karen believe her little act was working. The morning I planned to file formal charges, I got a text from Karen. Lucas, I'm so hurt by your behavior, but I'm willing to forgive you. Mom says you're just stressed about money. If you publicly apologize for accusing me, I'll let you drive me to physical therapy for my neck. That way you'd still have family support even after what you did. Let me know. XOXO. I looked at the message, amazed at her nerve. She was offering to let me be her driver as a reward for apologizing to her. The complete lack of self-awareness was almost impressive. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to the police station with my folder of proof tucked under my arm. The building was plain, just fluorescent lights and linoleum floors that squeaked as I walked. At the front desk, I asked for Detective Williams. He showed up a few minutes later with a completely unreadable face. Mr. Reyes, he said, holding out his hand. You're here about the unauthorized use case? I nodded. I've put together everything you suggested plus some extra stuff. He motioned for me to follow him to a small interview room with a table and 4 chairs. Before we start, I want to make sure you get what filing formal charges means. This isn't just a police report anymore. Once charges are filed, the prosecutor's office takes over. It becomes a criminal case. I understand. And you're ready for the blowback from your family? These situations can get messy. I remembered my mother's begging, Uncle Robert's threats, Karen's mind games. My destroyed car, wiped out savings, and college plans put on hold. All those years being the responsible one, the reasonable one. Always giving in to keep everyone happy. It's already a mess, detective, I said, but this time I need the truth to matter more than playing peacekeeper. He gave a quick nod, looking at me with what seemed like a bit of respect. Okay then, let's go through your evidence and get your formal statement. I opened the file and started laying out all the paperwork, each piece telling part of the story that had brought me here. As I talked, I felt more certain with every word. This wasn't just anger or determination. I was finally standing up for myself after all these years. This wasn't just about my car anymore. I was breaking free from a pattern I'd lived with my whole life. Whatever happened next, whatever drama came from my family, I could handle it. Because I was choosing truth over keeping quiet, self-respect over trying to please everyone, and real consequences over enabling bad behavior. No matter how the legal stuff turned out, just making that choice felt like I'd already won. The morning after filing my police report, I was hunched over at the nurse's station, trying to make sense of Dr. Patel's chicken scratch on a medication order, when my phone buzzed. Detective Williams' name popped up on screen. I went into the empty break room. Hello? Mr. Reyes, this is Detective Williams. I wanted to update you personally on your case. My gut clenched. Did something happen with the evidence? Actually, the evidence you provided was really solid. He sounded professional, but I could tell he was impressed. The DA's office has agreed to file multiple charges: unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, reckless endangerment, and filing a fraudulent insurance claim. That last one's about her statement claiming mechanical failure. I dropped into a plastic chair. So what happens now? An arrest warrant has been issued for Ms. Reyes Mitchell. Officers will probably pick her up today. He paused. I should warn you, family cases can get messy fast. You might get a lot of pressure to drop the charges. I'm already getting it, I said, thinking about my mom's begging calls and Uncle Robert's threats. That'll probably get worse. The prosecutor will call you about next steps, but I wanted to give you a heads up. After thanking him, I went back to the nurse's station feeling totally numb, completely forgetting about the medication order. Karen was about to be arrested. Actually arrested. I couldn't believe what I'd started. Lucas? You okay? Paula came over, noticing right away something was wrong. Yeah, just family stuff. I looked down at the medication order. Can you read what Dr. Patel wrote here? Is that 40 milligrams or 400? She looked at it. It's 40. And whatever family drama you've got going on, remember you've got people here who'll back you up. 4 hours later during lunch, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Reyes, this is Officer Diaz from Metro PD. As requested, this message confirms that Karen Reyes Mitchell has been taken into custody. The prosecutor's office will contact you with additional information. I just stared at my phone until the screen went black. It had really happened. Karen had been arrested. Within minutes, my phone blew up. A bunch of texts from my mom. Mom, Lucas, call me right now. Mom, they've arrested Karen. Mom, how could you do this to family? Mom, they put her in handcuffs. Uncle Robert left a voicemail that made me feel sick. I always thought your mother raised a decent man, but you've proven me wrong. Getting your own aunt arrested? Over a car? You're dead to this family, Lucas. Dead. Don't bother showing your face at any family events again. Your mother is completely crushed by what you did. Aunt Teresa's text was short and brutal. I've never been so disappointed in someone I once respected. Even cousins I barely talked to sent messages ranging from confused to straight-up hostile. The only exception was Olivia. It's about time someone made her face consequences. Don't let them guilt-trip you into backing down. Call me if you need backup. I muted my phone and finished my shift by focusing hard on my patients, thankful that life-or-death medical situations didn't leave any room to think about personal crap. After work, I drove Olivia's borrowed car to the supermarket, checking off things from my grocery list and trying not to think about the messages I'd have to deal with eventually. Picking out ripe avocados felt weirdly normal compared to all the family craziness going on. At the checkout, my phone buzzed with Emily's number. I hit ignore. A few seconds later, it started ringing again. I rejected that one, too. The cashier gave me a sympathetic look as my phone lit up a third time. Someone really wants to talk to you, she said as she scanned my stuff. Family drama, I muttered, hitting ignore again. Must be serious. That's the fourth call in 2 minutes. I looked at my screen as it started buzzing yet again. Fifth, actually. Back at my apartment, I put away the groceries and finally played my mom's voicemail. She sounded like she'd been crying. Lucas, they arrested Karen like a common criminal. She called me sobbing from the police station. They're saying she might have to spend the night in jail until her bail hearing tomorrow. You have to call the police and tell them this was all a misunderstanding. She's your aunt. How can you let this happen? I put my phone down and leaned against the counter, feeling completely drained. The truth was, Karen had committed a crime. Several crimes. What was happening to her now was just what happens when you break the law. Not me being out for revenge. But somehow I was the bad guy for not stepping in to save her from her own mess. My laptop dinged with an email from my insurance company. Now that the police report officially showed Karen took my car without permission and was racing it, they were reopening my claim. They still wouldn't cover everything because I contributed to the negligence by lending the car in the first place, but they'd pay 60% of what I still owed. Not great, but better than nothing. I was figuring out my transportation plans on a calendar when someone pounded on my door, making me jump. I peeked through the peephole and saw Chad pacing back and forth in the hallway, looking like a mess and totally worked up. I thought about pretending I wasn't home, but if I could stand up to my family, I could definitely deal with Karen's boyfriend. I opened the door but stayed in the doorway. Chad. His eyes were bloodshot and he looked unhinged. What the fuck, man? What the actual fuck? You had Karen arrested? I didn't have her arrested. I just reported what happened. The cops decided on their own what to do. He tried to push his way in, but I blocked the doorway without thinking. You need to drop the charges. Now. That's not how it works. Once they file charges, it's the prosecutor's call, not mine. Bullshit! He slammed his hand against the doorframe. You could just tell them it was all a mix-up. That you said she could take the car. But I didn't say that. And we both know it. His whole approach changed. Now he looked panicked instead of angry. Look, Lucas, I get it. You're mad about your car, but this is serious. Karen's got a record, man. A couple of small things from way back. She could actually go to jail for this. I had no idea about her record, but I tried not to show any reaction. Maybe she should have thought about that before taking my car racing. It was my idea, okay? Chad ran his hands through his hair. I'm the one who wanted to race. Karen just went along with it. You should be coming after me, not her. Detective Williams said they're looking into your part in this too. Chad went completely pale. What? A bunch of people saw both of you there. You're both on security footage. This isn't just going to disappear, Chad. He backed up, all his tough guy act crumbling. You don't get it. I can't have another driving charge. I'm still on probation from my last DUI, and there it was. The real reason he was freaking out. Not because he cared about Karen, but because he was scared for himself. You should go, I said, trying to stay calm. If there's anything else to talk about, let the lawyers handle it. You think you're so perfect, don't you? His face turned ugly with hate. Mr. Responsible Nurse with his perfect credit score? You have no clue what it's like to screw up and never be able to escape it. Taking my car? Racing wasn't some accident, Chad. You both made a bunch of bad decisions, and now you get to deal with what happens next. He pointed his finger right in my face. This isn't over. Your family already thinks you're a traitor. Just wait till Karen tells everyone who you really are. Goodbye, Chad. I shut the door and turned both locks, then waited until I heard his footsteps fade down the hall. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't know. Mr. Reyes, this is Alicia Morales from Channel 8 News. I'm doing a story on fake GoFundMe campaigns. Can you comment on the one your aunt started about her accident? Right after that came another notification. Someone from GoFundMe saying Karen's campaign had been flagged for fraud and taken down. The $1,200 she'd already collected was frozen while they investigated, and donors might get refunds. This whole mess was getting bigger than just our family now. Karen's made-up story was falling apart where everyone could see it. My phone rang again. It was Olivia. Hey, I answered, so glad to hear from someone who wasn't mad at me. You okay? Mom called me crying about Karen getting arrested. Pretty sure she thought I'd join in on being outraged. I flopped down on my couch. Chad just showed up here. Turns out he's on probation for a DUI and is totally freaking out about maybe getting charged, too. Not shocked, Olivia said flatly. Listen, I heard through the family gossip chain that there's some emergency meeting at Mom's tonight. They're planning how to save Karen and bring you back to your senses. Great. They made a point of not inviting me, which I'm taking as a win. But I wanted to warn you about what's coming. Thanks for the warning, and for the car loan, and for not thinking I'm some monster for doing this. Lucas. Olivia's voice got a little gentler. The real awful thing would have been letting her get away with it again. This should have happened years ago. After we hung up, I went to the kitchen and robotically made dinner, chopping veggies way harder than I needed to. My phone kept lighting up with messages I just couldn't deal with yet. I heard something outside and looked down from my window. Chad was pacing next to his black Mustang, waving his arms around while on the phone. Even from up here, I could tell he was freaking out. A few minutes later, he jumped in his car and tore out of the parking lot, leaving tire marks behind. I kept staring out the window long after he was gone, just watching the empty parking lot as it got dark. I felt so many things at once. Satisfaction that the truth was finally out, worry about how bad the family drama would get, and weirdly a kind of calm I wasn't expecting. For years I'd just taken whatever they dished out, always doing what my family wanted instead of standing up for myself. But I'd finally broken the cycle. Karen had to deal with what she'd done. Chad too. And yeah, I was dealing with my own stuff. Awkward. Family gatherings, relatives who might not speak to me for a long time because they didn't like what I did. But for the first time since I grew up, I wasn't twisting myself into knots trying to make everyone else's mess work out. Whatever happened next, the court stuff, family fights, figuring out how to get around without a car, I'd handle it on my own terms, not just doing what everyone else thought I should do. My phone buzzed with a text from Paula. Carpool schedule for your shifts this week is set. Sarah will pick you up at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow. Jeff has your evening rides. Team Lucas is on it. I smiled at the message. Turns out I wasn't as alone as my family tried to make me think. 3 weeks could change everything. At least that's what I kept telling myself as I sat on an uncomfortable hard bench in courtroom 4B, waiting for Karen's preliminary hearing to start. The wood-paneled room smelled like lemon cleaner, with attorneys and clients talking quietly in the background. Nothing helped calm my nerves. My tie was choking me, and I wished I hadn't let Olivia talk me into wearing it. "You need to look respectable," she'd said that morning as she fixed the knot. Like someone a judge would believe. I looked around the room for probably the 100th time. No sign of my mother or Uncle Robert, which wasn't surprising since they'd made it pretty clear whose side they were on. Olivia wanted to come for support but had an environmental presentation she couldn't move. The door at the front opened, and Karen walked in with her attorney, a gray-haired guy in a fancy suit who probably cost more than my totaled car was worth. What hit me right away was how different she looked. None of the drama or wounded act I was used to. Her hair was in a simple ponytail, hardly any makeup, and a serious expression. The neck brace was gone. She didn't look at me, but I could tell she knew I was there. Her shoulders got a little tense. The bailiff called everyone to order, and we all stood up as the judge came in, a serious-looking woman with reading glasses on the tip of her nose. Case number 47,829, People versus Karen Reyes Mitchell, the clerk announced. Preliminary hearing. Karen's attorney stepped forward right away. Your Honor, before we start, I'd like to present a motion to dismiss based on weak evidence and the family relationship between the complainant and my client. The judge glanced over her glasses. I've read your motion, Mr. Sanders. Being family doesn't cancel out unauthorized use or reckless endangerment, and the evidence from the prosecution looks pretty strong. Motion denied. Let's continue. I felt a little rush of satisfaction. The judge saw through the whole "but we're family" excuse that had always worked for Karen. The hearing itself was short and technical, mostly lawyers and the judge talking about procedures and evidence. Karen stood quietly next to her lawyer, somehow looking smaller without her usual dramatic performance. When the prosecutor mentioned my text messages as evidence, she noticeably flinched. 40 minutes later, the judge set a trial date and we were done. Karen huddled with her attorney in urgent conversation, still ignoring me completely. I slipped out of the courtroom, needing some fresh air and space from all the legal stuff. The October sun felt nice on my face after those harsh courtroom lights. I pulled my tie loose and took a deep breath, trying to make sense of what just happened. Karen looking so quiet. The judge not caring about family connections. The whole legal system slowly but surely moving forward. Lucas. I turned around to see my mother standing by a concrete planter, looking like she'd gotten so much older in just a few weeks. Her hair was flat and lifeless instead of its usual perfect style. The wrinkles around her eyes seemed deeper than before. Mom, I said, surprised. I didn't see you inside. I couldn't make myself go in. She came over slowly like she wasn't sure I wanted to talk to her. It felt too official. We both just stood there awkwardly. There was so much hurt between us that neither of us knew what to say. Part of me wanted to reach out to comfort her because she looked so beaten down, but another part was still on guard after all those angry phone calls and crying accusations. How are you? She finally asked. Getting by, I answered honestly. Olivia's still letting me use her car. Work's been cool about everything. Insurance is looking at my claim again now that the police reports are official. She nodded, glancing at the courthouse doors. How did it go in there? The judge said no to their request to dismiss. Set a trial date. Mom shut her eyes for a second. I was afraid of that. We went quiet again, with all these things we weren't saying hanging in the air. A young couple walked by with their toddler, and the kids' laughter made our tense situation feel even weirder. I've been thinking a lot, Mom finally said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. About patterns. About how we've handled things with Karen over the years. I waited, not wanting to cut her off when she was clearly trying to say something important. Did you know this isn't the first time? She looked right at me now, and she just seemed tired instead of angry like she'd been lately. With a car, I mean. Olivia mentioned something about Abuela's car a few years ago. Mom let out a short, fake laugh. That was actually the third time, not the first. The third? I stared at her. She nodded and sat down on the concrete planter. I hesitated, then sat beside her, making sure to leave some space between us. The first was your cousin Miguel's pickup when she was 24. She borrowed it to move some furniture, ended up in a ditch after some party. Said the brakes didn't work. Mom just stated it plainly, no sugarcoating. Robert paid to fix it. We all just swept it under the rug, i.e., remembered Miguel. He moved to Arizona forever ago and barely comes back. I always thought it was just because he lived so far away. Then there was my car, like 8 years ago, Mom went on. Karen borrowed it for some job interview. Brought it back all banged up on the passenger side. Told me someone hit her in a parking lot and took off. Her friend told me later she was actually texting and hit a guardrail. You seriously never mentioned any of this to me. We didn't tell anybody. That's how it always went. Karen would mess something up, then completely lose it, and we'd all jump in to save her from any actual consequences. Mom fidgeted with her sleeve. Robert would throw money at the problem. I'd deal with her meltdowns. Then we'd all act like nothing happened. What about Abuela's car? Mom looked miserable. That was the worst one. She said she was going to the store but went to some bar instead. Smashed into a concrete barrier. Would have cost more to fix than the car was worth. Abuela couldn't afford another one on her pension. So that's why she started taking the bus, I said, thinking about what Olivia had told me. Mom nodded. Yeah, at 78 years old. Rain or shine. We were so focused on protecting Karen that we stopped looking out for everyone else. She glanced up with teary eyes. You included. I sat there speechless. This was exactly what I'd been waiting to hear for weeks, but it didn't feel like winning. I just felt sad about all the unnecessary crap our family had put up with, because nobody would stand up to Karen. We always made excuses for her, Mom said softly. I guess that's where we went wrong. Her words just hung there between us. I'm not trying to punish her, I finally said. Or you guys. I just couldn't keep pretending nothing bad happens when she screws up. I get that now, she paused. I'm sorry, Lucas, for making you feel bad about standing up for yourself, for expecting you to just take it, like we've all been doing forever. It wasn't like everything was suddenly fixed. Too much had happened for that, but it was something. The first time anyone had actually acknowledged the problem that had been there my whole life. We talked a bit more, both of us kind of walking on eggshells until Mom had to go to work. We didn't hug or anything, but she squeezed my arm before she left, which meant a lot. 2 days later, I got a letter from Karen's lawyer. The deal they offered: Karen would plead guilty to taking my car without permission and driving like an idiot, pay me back for my car minus whatever insurance covered, do 100 hours of community service, and go to counseling. If I agreed, I wouldn't ask for the harshest punishment, which could mean jail time with her record. I called Miss Hernandez right away to talk about it. Honestly, this is a pretty good deal, she said, after looking it over. Getting your money back is the main thing, and that's in there. The community service and counseling should help with her behavior. Plus, it saves you the headache of going through a whole trial. What about the insurance fraud? All those lies on her GoFundMe? They've shut down the GoFundMe, and the prosecutor will drop the fraud charges if she does everything else and publicly admits she lied. This is a pretty standard deal, Lucas, and a good one for you. I thanked her and said I'd think it over. Later that night, Glenn from my insurance company called. Good news, Lucas, he said, actually sounding happy for once. Now that the police reports are in and the fraud stuff is cleared up, we can process your claim since someone else was driving your car without permission. We can't cover everything, but we can send you a check for 60% of what's left on your loan. It wasn't the full amount, but with Karen's payment too, I'd have enough to pay off the loan and put something down on a basic replacement car. When will I get the check? I asked, trying to figure out my budget. It usually takes 10 to 14 business days. Do you want it mailed or direct deposited? Finally, something was actually going right after weeks of money stress and uncertainty. The next Monday, Detective Williams called with news I wasn't expecting. Mr. Reyes, I wanted to let you know we've charged Chad Donovan too for the racing incident. What kind of charges? Street racing, driving drunk, and violating his probation from a previous DUI. He was in court this morning. With his record, he's in serious trouble. I remember Chad showing up at my apartment, freaking out about another driving charge. Guess he had a good reason to be scared. Will this affect Karen's case? I asked. Not directly, but the prosecutor might use it to show a pattern. Mr. Donovan was over the legal limit that night. People saw him drinking before everything happened. Your aunt might have been driving your car, but he's the one who started the racing. After thanking Detective Williams, I sat at my kitchen table trying to process everything. Chad was in serious trouble. Karen had offered to pay me back. Insurance was handling my claim. The system was actually working for me. Something I honestly didn't think would happen when I first stood up for myself. On Friday evening, Olivia texted, "Dinner at my place, 7 p.m. Some people want to see you. Nothing crazy, I promise." I showed up at her house feeling a little nervous despite what she said. Turns out her dining room table was set for 6. When I walked in, I found Olivia and her husband Daniel, plus our cousins Javier and Maria, and even Aunt Teresa. Uncle Robert's wife who'd sent me that disappointed text before. "Lucas!" Maria hurried over and gave me a quick hug. "Don't look so shocked. We don't all think you're the bad guy here." Dinner went better than expected. Nobody directly brought up the court stuff, but Javier finally addressed the obvious while pouring wine. "You know, I've been saying for years that somebody needed to call Karen out on her bullshit. Never thought quiet Lucas would be the one to finally do it." Maria nodded. "Remember when she borrowed my designer bag for a job interview and brought it back with wine all over it? Then acted like I was being shallow for getting upset? Or when she took my money for that concert ticket and never actually bought it?" Javier added. Then told everyone I was making a big deal out of a little mix-up. I glanced at Aunt Teresa, wondering how she felt hearing everyone trash-talk her sister-in-law. She caught me looking and didn't flinch. "Robert's still trying to wrap his head around all this," she said quietly. "He's been sticking up for Karen for so long it's hard for him to see how much damage that's done. But I want you to know I respect what you're doing, Lucas. I'm sure it wasn't easy." "It wasn't," I said. "Still isn't. When you love difficult family members," she said, "you have to learn the difference between supporting them and just letting them get away with everything. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let them face what they've done." After dinner, Olivia walked me to my car. I was still using hers until my insurance came through. "See? Not everyone's against you," she said, leaning on the door. "Actually, there's a whole group of family members who've been waiting for someone to break the Karen gets away with everything pattern. They've just been scared to say anything. I'm starting to figure that out." I smiled at my cousin, grateful for how she always had my back. "Thanks for doing this." "Don't thank me yet. Uncle Robert's still 100% Team Karen, and people listen to him. This isn't over." She patted my shoulder. "But you're not alone. Remember that." Back at my apartment, I spread the settlement papers across my coffee table. Karen had already signed the document. Her signature looked smaller and less showy than usual. All I needed to do was sign it too. I thought about everything that had happened since that night 3 weeks ago. The arguments, gathering evidence, the tension in court. Family taking sides I didn't expect. It had cost me a lot. Relationships on thin ice, family gatherings I couldn't attend, and hours of stress and worry. But sitting there looking at the paperwork that meant Karen would finally get what was coming to her, I realized I'd already won something big, no matter how the legal stuff ended up. This was the first time anyone in my family had stood up and stopped everyone from making excuses for Karen, while the rest of us paid the price. It wasn't a perfect deal. No amount of community service could give me back those stressful weeks. The money she'd pay me wouldn't make up for all the hassle of not having a car, and I knew some relatives might stay mad at me forever. But things had definitely changed. Mom actually admitted they'd always covered for Karen. Teresa had quietly taken my side. Even Javier and Maria confirmed I wasn't the only one Karen had screwed over through the years. I grabbed a pen and signed the agreement. Tomorrow I'd drop it off with Miss Hernandez to get the plea deal going. This wasn't about revenge. I just wanted to show that you can't keep getting away with stuff forever, even if your family and everyone usually lets you off the hook. As I put it in the envelope, I suddenly felt really calm. The car was just a thing. Expensive, yeah, but still just a thing that could be replaced. But stopping this family habit of letting Karen get away with everything, that was worth a lot more than any car. I fiddled with my new Honda Civic seat for the 5th time, still not used to how everything worked. The car was only 3 weeks old, bought with money from the insurance payout and what Karen had to pay me after court. Nothing fancy, just a practical blue sedan that would get me around without any hassle. After 6 months bumming rides in Olivia's car and dealing with complicated work carpools, having my own wheels again seemed almost too good to be true. My phone told me to turn right, though I barely needed the directions. I'd driven to Mom's house hundreds of times. But today was different. This was my first real family get-together since the whole court mess happened. 6 months, half a year since signing those settlement papers. Since then, I'd gotten into a routine. I picked up extra shifts at work, finally to build some savings instead of just climbing out of debt. Karen started her community service and therapy sessions without the dramatic fits everyone thought she'd throw. And most shocking of all, Mom and I started fixing our relationship through weekly coffee meetups that went from super awkward to actually pretty nice. I pulled into Mom's driveway behind Uncle Robert's spotless Buick. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the wine bottle I'd brought and headed for the door. Mom opened it before I could knock. "Lucas," she said with a real smile, "I'm so glad you came. Thanks for asking me over." I handed her the wine, trying to ignore the nerves jumping around in my gut. "How many people showed up?" "Just family," she said, which wasn't really an answer since just family could mean anywhere from 5 to 20 people in our crazy clan. Following her into the living room, I looked around quickly. Aunt Teresa and Uncle Robert were on the couch, talking with my cousin Javier. Olivia and her husband Daniel hung out by the window. A few other relatives were scattered around, and in the far corner, partly hidden by the dining room doorway, was Karen. She looked different. Nothing dramatic, still had the long hair and wore clothes that showed off her figure. But something about her had changed. She wasn't putting on the usual show. It was like someone turned her volume knob down. "Lucas!" Olivia broke away and came over. "Nice wheels outside. The Honda suits you. Practical and reliable. You calling me boring?" Grinned to let her know I was kidding. "I'm saying you've got your head screwed on, right?" She spoke softer. "Just so you know, things are still a bit awkward. But not as bad as you might think." Before I could ask what she meant, Javier came over. "The man of the hour," he said, slapping my shoulder. "Good to see you, cousin." Over the next half hour, I made my rounds, having short, kind of stiff conversations with everyone. What hit me wasn't really what people said, but how they said it. They were more respectful somehow, more careful than before. When Aunt Teresa asked about my new car, she actually listened instead of switching the topic to her son's latest big achievement. When I mentioned a tough situation at work, Uncle Robert's brother-in-law Manuel didn't jump in with advice I never asked for. "You're handling everything really well, Lucas," my cousin Maria said quietly while we got more drinks in the kitchen. "Not just today, the whole situation. Must have been tough standing your ground when the family was against you." "Not everyone was against me," I said, thinking about how Olivia always had my back. "More of us were on your side than you realize." She looked toward the living room. "Some of us have been waiting years for someone to finally tell Karen enough." Mom called everyone to dinner, and we all headed into the dining room, where they'd stretched out the table for all 12 of us. I ended up between Olivia and Javier, right across from Uncle Robert, with Karen at the far end. Dinner started with Mom's usual grace. Then came the normal chaos of passing dishes and everybody talking at once. I kept my eyes on my plate, still getting used to being back at a family dinner that used to be so normal for me. "Your mother says you're thinking about nurse practitioner school," Uncle Robert said out of nowhere, his first time speaking directly to me all night. I looked up, surprised he'd asked, and even more surprised he didn't sound disapproving. "Yeah, looking at programs for next fall." He nodded as he cut his chicken. "Smart career move. Your aunt knows someone who did that. Doubled what she makes in 3 years." For Uncle Robert, this was practically a standing ovation. I mumbled, "Thanks, hope so," before he turned to talk to Mom. During dinner, I kept catching Karen looking at me, then quickly turning away when I noticed. She barely talked, just answered questions when someone asked her something directly. So different from how she usually tried to be the star of every family gathering. After we finished the main course, while Mom and Aunt Teresa took plates away for dessert, Karen finally came over to me. She'd obviously been waiting for a moment when everyone else was busy. "Lucas." Her voice was quieter than usual. "Can we talk for a minute?" I nodded, and we went to the mostly empty living room. She stood with her arms crossed, not like she was mad, more like she was holding herself together. "I practiced what I wanted to say," she began, and I could tell she'd rehearsed this. "In my counseling, we talk about making amends. Not just saying sorry, but owning up to the hurt I caused." I waited, letting her continue. "What I did with your car was wrong. I lied about why I needed it. I used it for something dangerous that you never would have approved of. And then I tried to blame you when it got wrecked." She said it while looking me in the eye in a way that seemed rehearsed but honest. "My counselor says I tend to avoid taking blame, and I'm trying to work on that." Her apology seemed weird but important. This wasn't the usual Karen show, no tears or making herself the victim like she normally did whenever anyone called her out. "Thanks for saying that," I said, picking my words. "I know you didn't exactly choose to go to counseling, but I'm glad it's helping." It's still hard. For a second, something real showed on her face. Way easier to point fingers at everyone else than look at myself. But I'm trying. She stopped. Anyway, I just wanted you to know, I get why you did what you did. I wouldn't have paid for the car if you hadn't forced me to. This confession, so different from how she usually dodged blame, totally caught me by surprise. Thanks for saying that. She gave an awkward nod, and I could tell she wanted to add something that would make it less her fault or turn herself into the victim again. But she didn't, which was new for her. "Dessert's ready," Mom called from the dining room, breaking our moment of uncomfortable honesty. As we headed back to the table, I noticed how differently everyone was treating Karen. The family warmth was still there, but nobody was babying her anymore. No one jumped up to get her stuff or kept asking if she needed anything. When she complained about missing some party because of her community service hours, nobody volunteered to pull strings to change her schedule. Small changes, but huge for our family. After dessert, everyone split up into little groups to chat. I was helping Mom with the dishes when I overheard Uncle Robert talking to his son Michael in the dining room next door. "Remember what I'm telling you," Uncle Robert said, his voice serious. "Never lend anything to Karen that you can't afford to lose. Not money, not your car, nothing. Learn from your cousin's experience." I almost dropped the plate I was rinsing. Coming from Uncle Robert, who had always defended Karen and criticized me, this was a total 180. Mom noticed my reaction. "He's been saying stuff like that for a couple months now," she said quietly. It's like once he saw the actual evidence in court, something finally clicked. Better late than never, I guess. She handed me another plate. "I know I've said this before, but I'm sorry for how I handled everything at first. I was so used to fixing problems and keeping the peace that I couldn't see how much damage it was doing." During our weekly coffee meetups, she'd apologized many times, and I could tell she meant it more each time. "We're figuring out how to do better," I said. "That's what matters." People started leaving as it got later. Everyone seemed more relaxed saying goodbye than when they'd arrived. The awkward feeling had mostly gone away during dinner. Karen took off early, saying she had community service in the morning, with just a quick "bye, Lucas" on her way out. At the end, only Olivia, Daniel, Mom, and I were left in the living room. Daniel stepped out to make a work call. "That went better than I expected," Olivia said, kicking off her shoes and curling up on the couch. "Did you notice Aunt Teresa?" She actually asked about my job instead of just talking about her kids. Mom nodded. "Things have been changing. It's slow, but you can definitely tell. It's not just with Karen either," Olivia continued, looking at me. "Remember how Uncle Manuel would always make those gross comments about women's appearances and everyone would just laugh awkwardly? Last month at Maria's birthday, Javier actually called him out on it. Said right to his face, 'We don't talk about women that way anymore, Uncle.' I almost fell out of my chair. No way. I'd seen this play out so many times before. Manuel saying something crude, everyone squirming but letting it slide because it seemed easier than making a scene. Yup, and you know what's crazy? Manuel just mumbled something and stopped. No explosion, no big family drama. That was it. She got closer. "You kind of started something, Lucas. When you stood up to Karen, you showed everyone you can actually say something without the sky falling." "I wasn't trying to start some revolution," I said. "I just wanted my car problem fixed." "That's usually how it works," Mom chimed in. Someone finally says enough not to make some big statement, but because they've just had it. By the time I was heading out, the night felt different than when it started. Mom hugged me at the door, a normal hug without that desperate grip she'd developed during the worst of our family mess. "See you Wednesday for coffee?" she asked. "Wouldn't miss it," I told her. Outside, the air felt cool and crisp. I unlocked my new car, still getting used to the beep after all those years with my old Toyota's key. "Going my way?" Olivia called, walking to her car behind mine. "Want to grab a quick drink and talk?" Daniel's stuck on work calls for another hour. "Rain check?" "I'm pretty beat." "Too much family time," she nodded. "Call me tomorrow?" I promised I would and hopped in the driver's seat. Pulling away from Mom's house, I couldn't help thinking about the crazy ride these past 6 months had been. It all cost me big time. My old car totaled, weeks of bumming rides, all that family drama, and those stressful meetings with lawyers. Some days I seriously wondered if sticking to my guns was worth all the headaches. But tonight showed me something I hadn't expected from that whole mess. Not just getting a replacement car, but something way more important. How my family actually started changing after decades of the same old crap. Karen finally facing real consequences. Uncle Robert backing off from always taking her side. Even other relatives started speaking up about stuff they'd kept quiet about forever. For me, though, the biggest win was inside my own head. I didn't feel that knot in my stomach anymore whenever I had to tell my family no. I stopped feeling like I had to clean up everyone else's messes just to keep things nice. Now I could still love them without letting them walk all over me. Merging onto the highway toward my apartment, I realized my whole idea of what family loyalty means had completely changed. Being loyal wasn't about letting people get away with terrible behavior or sacrificing my own sanity to shield them from consequences. Real loyalty was actually caring enough to call them on their BS, believing they could do better, and refusing to play along with the same toxic games anymore. The road stretched ahead with streetlights dotting the way home. My new car drove great, responsive and solid. I felt like I was finally moving forward too, different than before, but heading somewhere better than if I'd just kept my mouth shut. Funny how sometimes losing something leads to gaining something better. What felt like I was betraying my family turned out to be the most loyal thing I could have done.